2 men, 1 demon. Both were kings over their domain, powerful and able to rally their nations to victory. Their problem, unfathomable pride and the belief that they were more powerful than the God they worshipped. One survived their horrible ordeal, but it took 10 years of punishment for him to get back to where he was. The other? He fell on his own sword in defeat after God turned against him. Who are these 2 figures? No other than Odysseus and Saul, 2 great men in their skill, but the same thing that made them masterful in their own right was the same reason their own work and pride led to the torment of their lives. King Saul emerged as Israel's first monarch during a time of existential crisis. The Israelite tribes had long lived as a loose confederation under judges and prophets, but the Philistines posed an ever-growing threat with their iron weapons and organized armies. Saul, son of Kish from the tribe of Benjamin, stood out immediately with his striking physical presence. He was tall and handsome, head and shoulders above the rest of the people. The prophet Samuel anointed him in private after a divine revelation, and Saul soon proved his worth by leading a daring rescue of the besieged town of Jabesh-Gilead from the Ammonites. This victory brought public acclaim at Gilgal, where the people crowned him king. Early in his reign, the Spirit of the Lord empowered him for battle. He achieved victories against multiple enemies, began unifying the tribes, and established the foundations of a centralized kingdom. Everything suggested divine favor rested upon him. Similarly, Odysseus, king of the island of Ithaca, rose through a different kind of heroism in the legendary Trojan War. Portrayed in Homer's epics as a master strategist and eloquent leader, he devised the Trojan horse that finally brought the decade-long siege to an end. He commanded loyalty from his men through cunning and bravery, proving himself a unifier who could motivate others toward a common goal. Like Saul, Odysseus enjoyed initial divine support, particularly from Athena, the goddess of wisdom, who valued his intellect and resourcefulness. Both men began their stories with heavenly endorsement and outward success that masked deeper vulnerabilities. Yet pride would unravel everything. In the biblical account, Saul's downfall began with acts of disobedience that revealed a heart more concerned with appearances and human approval than with faithful obedience. When facing the Philistines and growing impatient while waiting for Samuel to offer sacrifices, Saul performed the ritual himself, usurping the prophet's role. Samuel confronted him sharply, declaring that his kingdom would not endure. The decisive breach came in the command against the Amalekites. God instructed Saul to utterly destroy them and all their possessions as judgment for ancient wrongs. Saul won the battle, but spared the Amalekite king Agag and the finest livestock, later claiming the people wanted the animals for sacrifice. When Samuel arrived, Saul offered excuses and shifted blame. The prophet's words cut deep, stating that to obey is better than sacrifice, and that because Saul had rejected the word of the Lord had rejected him as king. Saul's partial obedience and self-justification exposed the pride that made him believe his judgment could improve upon or substitute for God's clear commands. Odysseus displayed a similar flaw through hubris, the excessive pride that Greek tradition warns leads to nemesis. After cleverly blinding the Cyclops Polyphemus, son of Poseidon, and escaping the monster's cave by tricking him with the false name Nobody, Odysseus could not resist boasting as his ship pulled away. He shouted his true identity and taunted the wounded giant, revealing himself as Odysseus of Ithaca. This act of glory-seeking allowed Polyphemus to call upon his father Poseidon for vengeance. The sea god's curse condemned Odysseus to a long and suffering-filled journey home. Later, despite warnings, his crew slaughtered the sacred cattle of the sun god Helios, bringing Zeus's wrath and the destruction of their ship. Odysseus's intelligence, which saved him many times, repeatedly crossed into arrogance. He lingered too long in victories or places of comfort, trusted his own schemes over prophetic guidance, and sought personal renown at the expense of his men's safety. Two men, both led by their own desires, as the gift that was given to them is not put in their hands instead of the one that gave it to them. As they continued down this path, both leaders heard warnings, but chose their own timing and interpretation, placing themselves above the divine will they professed to honor. This is the danger of hubris. The Bible itself states in Proverbs that pride comes before the fall, and both of these men suffered greatly. The punishments that followed were fitting and severe, unfolding as prolonged consequences rather than instant destruction. For Saul, divine rejection manifested gradually yet devastatingly. The Spirit of the Lord departed from him, replaced by a tormenting evil spirit that drove him toward paranoia and instability. He grew violently jealous of the young David, who had slain Goliath and won greater popular favor, hurling spears at him and hunting him through the wilderness. During this same time, David was listening to God and refusing to hurt Saul because he was God's appointed leader. As disobedience continued, military success faded as the Philistines pressed harder. In desperation before a final battle, Saul violated his own laws by consulting the witch of Endor to summon Samuel's spirit from the dead. The apparition confirmed the coming doom. On Mount Gilboa, Saul's army was routed. His sons, including the loyal Jonathan, fell in battle. Wounded and facing capture, humiliation, and torture, Saul chose to fall on his own sword. His body was stripped and displayed by the enemy. God's punishment removed favor, prophetic guidance, and ultimately life itself, leaving Saul isolated in his final moments. His dynasty crumbled shortly afterward, giving way to David. Odysseus endured a far longer ordeal under Poseidon's relentless opposition. What should have been a swift voyage home stretched into 10 years of wandering. Storms scattered his fleet. He faced monsters such as Scylla and Charybdis, seductive dangers like the Sirens and the witch Circe, and the deadly hospitality of the Lestrygonians and Lotus Eaters. He spent a year with Circe, and 7 years captive to the nymph Calypso. A visit to the underworld brought prophecies of further suffering. After his crew's final transgression with Helios's cattle, Zeus destroyed the last ship, leaving Odysseus alone and shipwrecked. Washed ashore on various hostile lands, he relied on wits, disguises, and occasional divine aid from Athena to survive. Upon reaching Ithaca, he found his palace overrun by over 100 suitors, consuming his wealth and pressuring his faithful wife Penelope. Only through careful planning, humility in disguise, and help from his son Telemachus and loyal servants did he reclaim his throne in a bloody reckoning. Odysseus survived, but at the cost of all his companions, years stolen from his family, and deep personal transformation. He returned humbler, more pious, and patient. These two figures share profound similarities that transcend their cultural differences. Both began with divine favor and impressive leadership, yet saw it eroded by pride that led them to defy higher authority. Both experienced jealousy and instability in their later years, and both paid personally and nationally for their choices. Their stories highlight how the very traits that fuel greatness, confidence, decisiveness, and boldness can become fatal when twisted by self-exaltation. In its own way, it shows God's comical nature, watching us humans as we think we control our own fate until He has the final say-so. Their endings diverge in telling ways. Odysseus eventually restored order to his household through endurance and growth. Saul's story ends in unrelenting tragedy, without full repentance or restoration, paving the way for a new era under David. This reflects broader contrasts in worldviews, but the cautionary message unites them. Pride whispers that one can negotiate with or surpass divine will through cleverness or selective compliance. Reality teaches otherwise. Whether in the hills of ancient Israel or across the wine-dark sea, those who place themselves above God invite isolation, torment, and collapse. The tales of Odysseus and Saul endure because they mirror universal human tendencies. We admire their strengths, recognize their flaws in ourselves, and learn that true leadership and fulfillment come not from self-elevation, but from alignment with higher purposes. Humility before the divine, wholehearted obedience, and restraint in victory offer the path that pride destroys. In an age still filled with powerful figures, tempted by the same illusions, their stories remain urgently relevant. Will we heed the warning before our own pride extracts its price? Or will history repeat the falls of these once great kings? The choice, as always, rests with each of us. Subscribe for more philosophy videos like this, and check out our other videos below.